Hello there, welcome back to the Hearts of Iron campaign Abridged, where previously we conquered a whole bunch of Central America and kicked our enemies out, making things look better but not really be any better. We also recruited an absolutely massive army, which we've yet to find a use for, but one's coming up. And there was a lot of nuclear action in Texas as we killed many enemies and prevented the death of our allies, but again didn't really achieve anything. And now we're going to do some more cheating. I was looking at Cuba. Cuba is not in the war, they're not in a faction, and I figured I could try and invade them like I did with Panama to gain more territory close to the enemy that we can use to help us invade them. But I decided instead to do this the fast way. I just used the console command to annex their territory. This avoids me having to actually bother landing troops there, and comes with another pretty big advantage. It's controlled by me afterwards, so I get to decide what's built there. That's one of the key problems we have. The AI controls what's built in most places, and they don't build things that we need, like infrastructure and naval bases. So I'm going to build up Cuba. I was disappointed that it was only one province, so you can't put more than one air base there or more than one radar station. Kind of sucks for how big the place is. But we can put a whole bunch of naval bases along the coast to help us invade the USA. There was a period where for some reason the USA forgot to launch its fighters for a bit, so our side started nuking them and probably inflicting some serious damage, and I thought I'll get in on this action as well. I decided to be more spectacular by nuking many places at the same time. Bit more of a morale shock, I imagine. So the east coast of the USA is getting absolutely bombarded by the rest of the world, just nuking them. I bet most factions at this stage have developed the nuke technology and the nuclear reactors, so everyone's just nuking them. It's all good fun. I'm also helping out by nuking Newfoundland, because you can see one of the classic death pockets for the Comintern is sitting here. I thought maybe if we nuke the enemy in front of them, they might try and push forward and do something, but well, they didn't. They're just content to sit there in their penguin flock strats and eventually die due to lack of supplies. Not necessarily die, that is, they just like run out of weapons or something because they break. I don't know how attrition works in this game, it's a bit weird. There was then a more promising looking attack. The Comintern were able to capture a port that I myself was currently planning to go and try to capture. I decided to nuke all of the enemies around it and then deploy my spam in through the port to hold this pocket. Obviously this is what we did in the last part and it went very badly, but I decided to be a bit more cautious this time and try to defend the port more. I am right now butting my head against a massive stack of USA troops to the west trying to get to another port. That didn't go very well. I also spammed some more mechanized infantry up here into New England, where another front has been created by the Comintern, and again they're just dying and not doing anything. So I can jump in, I'll have a couple of in-game days to achieve something and then it's going to be over for me as well. I was able to take a region up here, but I think we then lost the region and I just started withdrawing, so I guess not much happened. I don't know why I bothered mentioning that. Here's me attempting to take another region and failing, but more importantly, on top of the spam I deployed to hold that pocket, I've now deployed a real army. This massive stack of 25 divisions of our comrades infantry, the guys who are supposedly a powerful exploit division but maybe not really. They are now here and they are marching into Florida, and there's not enough stuff there to stop them from getting in, so that's going to be incredibly helpful. Here's me withdrawing from that New England front, and the USA are now nuking us on this front as well, so that's all good. Obviously, enormous Comintern casualties to be expected. Nothing's been achieved on the Newfoundland front as well. That's all good. This front though is starting to look a little bit better. We've now captured a bit of territory and the Comintern are invading Florida at the same time. I jump in on this invasion to help out because we can make something of this, and really helping out is the fact I also nuked, well, all of Florida I guess. So Florida is now a massive nuclear wasteland with fewer enemy troops defending it. we've got tons of troops coming down from the north and attacking from the south. Actually, I think the guys from the north sailed back around to attack from the south. Something. I've got 50 divisions here moving up through Florida. This proved to be not enough because of combat width. These divisions are quite big. We can only fight with like 2 to 4 of them at a time. So I ended up just slamming myself against these enemy front lines that aren't that heavily guarded in comparison. And we just achieved nothing really. It was quite embarrassing. Obviously don't really know why, but we eventually solved it by having another stack of 25 comrades divisions. Naval invade just behind the front line. We can then use these guys to cut off the front line and make sure they have no supplies. That will help us in the long term, but we don't really need to wait that long because we can also back attack to increase combat width, and we do defeat the divisions down there soon enough. We also managed to link up with the other pocket from earlier, so now we've got a continuous bit of territory in the USA. It's not completely choke pointed in Florida like it was before, so it's a bit harder for the enemy to force us out, plus the Comintern have landed all sorts of stuff in here. So we're now in the race against time as usual. We have like a week or so before our organization gets completely wiped out by the Comintern eating all the supplies. The Comintern have also started a new pocket further up the coast, which we're going to be joined to once we take out all of these USA troops in front of us. So at this stage we actually have a substantial presence on mainland USA. Obviously all of our troops are going to be debuffed and will be unable to attack, but this is better than anything we've seen before. So now we need to use our numbers to make something of this, and for that I decided to do a whole bunch of invasions at different spots along to the west to try and extend the front all along the coast to maximize the number of ports we have in use. That's the goal, because of course this really is all about supply routes rather than taking territory. It's just supply routes we need. If we had supplies, we'd have won this war a long time ago. I sent the super soldiers to go up to the top end of the front, where here we can push a little bit more and try to get to that port. On the way we quickly dispatched an enemy division that was trapped in the corner there, and now we'll start pushing forwards. Again, the super soldiers aren't all that super. They might actually be bad for all I know, because the way the mod changes things could be ruining this, but in this case we do get the job done eventually. We actually get defeated, the enemy successfully defends the port, but then I just start attacking again, doing the old spam low organization attacks thing, and it eventually works. We eventually cause them to leave, perhaps because their reinforcements couldn't show up or something. So that's that. Another port is taken. Does this actually materially help the front line? Well, a bit. It will increase the minimum supply level in all of these divisions, but that's not going to make a big difference because it's still far too low. I wanted to try and advance further up the coast because in this situation we could ideally get up to Washington. We're not that far from the enemy capital, and I was able to advance a couple more regions, but then I was totally out of supplies and stuff, and the enemy had tons of divisions in the way. So I eventually kind of gave up on this and decided to go back, and I withdrew the super soldiers from this front. We can ship them east to Bermuda, which we now control, to get some more supplies, and then think about coming back later for a classic supply attack, maybe. Here's us taking down the USS Midway or something. I think that was a real ship from real life. Anyway, something good happened, and here the preparations for our attack on Texas are coming along with plenty of invasion routes. Here are the super soldiers on a new front. The Comintern also had a small pocket further up the coast from Washington, so this is a little independent area they've captured. I wasn't paying too much attention to it, but after I showed up, I was able to push towards Boston by essentially losing that battle hard enough that we win in the classic Hearts of Iron 4 way that I've ranted about so many times. So we just somehow push past the enemy, and now we can walk on towards Boston, thus securing not only more victory points, but another port that we can use to supply this other little pocket that's disconnected from everything else. And that goes fine. We advance in after winning a couple more battles to get there, defended against the counterattack, and then I was satisfied. But again, it's going to be a case where increasing our supply slightly doesn't come anywhere close to alleviating the supply situation. That means our Comintern AI allies will not be willing to ever advance, and this pocket will just be here until the USA decide to attack it, which is the same on all of our invasion fronts at the moment. Luckily, the USA doesn't know that, so they're not really attacking us. From here we could try and make an effort to link up with the New England death pocket, but there are no ports on the way, so I was thinking extending up the coast here isn't really going to help. It's just going to risk me being cut off and being unable to escape. I'm not quite sure if it would have been a bad idea to try that, because taking more territory can increase your supply amount, but I didn't try in the end. But we're going to switch now to the real action. It's time to get going and deploy loads of our stuff to Texas. We begin with a round of nukings, of course, just making sure that there are no coastal forts that aren't damaged and no divisions there that aren't damaged for when we arrive. We have to do the thing where we secretly get air superiority while the enemy aren't paying attention to open up these slight windows where we can bomb them. I do it again as we begin our landings, so that's perfect timing. Now it's time to start taking some territory, and you can see we are winning the battles to land. We actually can't see what's defending, and in some cases there are quite a lot of enemy divisions defending, but it's not enough, either because of the bombardment or because they happen to get RNG'd out of the battle. We are able to make some serious landings. Obviously now we're going to have no supplies all on our own. We don't need the Cometerne to kill us now. We've landed so many divisions, we're going to be in trouble. But we don't have to keep them all here, that's the thought. I'm just landing millions of things because we have them in order to make sure we overwhelm whatever's here. And now we just want to establish a decent front line, and if we can, also get east towards New Orleans, since that would be another port. In an ideal world, we'd also link up with the Florida pocket, but my hopes there didn't really come through because of how difficult it proved to be to get to New Orleans. There's not that much there, and the enemy have divisions retreating from it. I'm trying to spam in there with 15 divisions making the attack, but the enemy's defense is enough. I think there was also a naval invasion going on of it just before I attacked. Unfortunately, my timing wasn't quite perfect to help out with that invasion. We can also, as you can see, try to push from the other direction. I think I did advance one region there, but then got stuck and out of supply. Still, we've achieved something, and we can't always say that in this campaign. We've made this new death pocket, our own death pocket where we can die by our own hand due to lack of supplies. Can we do anything with it though? It feels like we haven't achieved that much so far, but we have achieved quite a lot technically because of the way the USA is. They're actually halfway to capitulation. Because all of their key territories are on the coast, having these tiny coastal footholds actually is a big deal. We're 3/4 winning the war now apparently, so this is a good situation to be in. It's just a situation where if we get attacked, we won't be in it anymore, so we rely on the AI not noticing that. We also now need to reorganize our death pocket to make it a bit less deathy. So we spread a couple of the armies out to make a stable front line, and start thinking about pulling the other invasion forces off to sit in the background and see what happens. Looks like some of our guys forgot to set sail and are now walking through Mexico to get to the front line. Well, they'll get there eventually. But yes, we start pulling things off of this front line and assigning armies to little bits. So we should be able to have like 4 or 5 divisions defending each spot. The same amount the enemy are going to have defending on their side eventually, basically. So a new face-off will resume. We, though, will not be able to stay in supply, and they will, so it's not exactly a favourable face-off. I did have my big stack of tanks, and you can see I used them to break through the front line, but then I just sort of went back again in the end, because there's not that much point. The enemy have so many troops. There's nothing useful we can do back here. Like, we could drive to Dallas, but then I'd just be cut off. We can try and attack along the front line, but the enemy have reasonable stats. It's actually quite hard for our tanks to attack. Plus, we're out of supply and the tanks are quickly becoming all but useless. So in general, you can kind of make one breakthrough, take one region, then you're out of supply and the tanks just stop working. They're not all that good against infantry, or against infantry divisions I should say, because they do have a load of anti-tank guns. And you can see here, this is the risk. If we lose one little bit, we can be cut off easily, and our spam division is again cut off, not the first time it's happened to them. We actually get doubly cut off here, and we end up having to make loads of desperate, low organization, low to no supply battles to try and re-establish this part of the front line. is partially because I was withdrawing things. Our front line wasn't especially stable, so the odd enemy division was able to push in quite easily and defeat things with low organisation. And now, we just keep butting ourselves against it until the situation resolves. You can see on the left, the strength of my army is actually being reduced. We're taking significant casualties in the fighting here. These enemy divisions are good and they're hard to push back. So, difficult going. We have achieved something though up in Newfoundland. At last we're starting to capture the island. It's actually an invasion from the north that's doing this. We control a little bit of Quebec. Some stuff has spammed its way down and got the enemy stuck here. We've thrown in the Ice Boys to help out, and it looks like we're winning the battle to push the enemy off the island. So while that probably won't help all that much, it's certainly a long fought battle. We've lost a lot to take Newfoundland, and maybe we're about to do it. I'm though more focused on trying to once again save the extra spam army. We're pretty much dead, but the enemy on the tile we need to get through are also usually quite weak. It's just one division. We can attack from multiple sides. Although because we have no fuel, it takes so long to move into that region that every time we defeat the enemy and push them off, something else will just happen to walk in from the region next door. Meaning we have to fight a lot of battles to have any chance of reuniting our two pockets here. The other option, of course, would be to try and take New Orleans and sail out, but I had given up all hope on anything like that. Eventually, we achieve success, unify the front line, and what I decided to do is actually give up this little stretch of land, because I thought there's no point holding the land with no ports in it if we're not going to advance from it to another port. So I started shortening my front line after this, and you'll eventually see it ends up to the east of Houston. We're going to concentrate our forces there. The tanks are going to get out of there entirely. As mentioned, they're not too useful once they're out of fuel and the enemy are entrenched in front of us. What we can do though is potentially use them for something else, and you can see I'm taking a look over here to the west coast. Because we control Central America, we can sail through and do naval landings on the other side. I figured maybe that will reduce the pressure on us if we can just start another front and hold another death pocket. If we make enough pockets, because they're all independently supplied and because the Comintern's going to spread its units out between them, it will improve the supply situation in each one. So while each individual one isn't that good, if we do it enough times they'll all get better. Something, something, something. I start planning to invade the west coast. That's the point there. We've taken Newfoundland, as you can see, and the Ice Boys find themselves in a familiar situation where they're defending a coastline against enemies who can cross a strait to get in. In this case, the enemy are gradually dying out there. I think we eventually did take them out and take that tiny little other island as well, which is useful because it has a port and an airbase on it. All good stuff there. It's contributing slightly at the very least. From here, things start to settle down into a somewhat stable state. Well, one that's stable because the enemy aren't attacking us very much, I should say. We have enough supplies to be somewhat organised in our personal death pocket after we withdraw everything, partially because we're actually getting some of our supplies through Mexico, which means our control of ports in this particular area doesn't matter all that much. It would be so good if Mexico was actually in the war and we could just walk west and attack the USA along other fronts. Unfortunately, I don't know if there's any way to make them be interested in that, so I did poke around but nothing came of it. And now we just rely on our Western USA plans to get us out of this deadlock. There's still a battle going on for those islands near Alaska, by the way. I mentioned that like 4 parts ago and said I'd come back to it, but I never did. Essentially, there's a hell war going on for some islands that's been going on for the last 20 or so in-game years. I don't even know. Not paying any attention to it, but I'm pretty sure the Comintern are getting owned all the time like usual. As for me, I'm going to try and establish naval superiority on that western coast to make sure we're going to be allowed to do naval invasions. This will also allow the AI to do them. One thing I noted is that the AI will plan naval invasions but then never get naval superiority. I don't know if it's a glitch or something, but if you go around and look at all of their both planes and ships, they're all just awaiting orders in bases around the world, so they're not really using them for all that much. Here's a nice development. I was talking to good old Communist USA, and they were willing to let me take over some territory that they had occupied. This is actually my second round of getting territory. We'll see the first round's results in a second. Here I was able to acquire Bermuda and Jamaica. This is quite important because it increases the amount of control that I personally have over air bases that are being used to contest the all-important East Coast USA air theatre. So now Cuba, Haiti, Jamaica and Bermuda are all in range. The only one I don't have, I think, is Bahamas and maybe Puerto Rico or something. But basically, we can make sure that there are level 10 air bases that are in supply, able to participate in this war, which the AI doesn't do obviously on its own. So we're going to make sure that all is good, everything's repaired up everywhere, infrastructure's maxed out, there are naval bases everywhere, to make sure as many planes are flying in there as possible, and that will gradually have an effect. The first round thing I mentioned is that I also got control of Newfoundland and Labrador. This is perhaps more important actually, because this is a death pocket, and now that we finally have control over a pocket in terms of building, we can make it not a death pocket. We can install maximum level infrastructure, we can install ports everywhere and massively increase the supply cap in this area by just allowing the entire world to ship up here. In this fashion, we can cause this death pocket to become a regular pocket, and if we can get the organization of our allies up high enough, they might bother to attack the enemy, and that could be good because we have hundreds of divisions and the enemy are only holding us off with a few. We just don't have any organization. So that's a genuine plan with some promise right there. Finally, our civilian industries will be doing something. In the past, they were just building thousands of naval bases in Hainan and in the Philippines and stuff, things that aren't very useful just so the notification would go away. It also helps with the air superiority stuff because Newfoundland has a max level airbase on it already that just needs to be repaired. It's going to take forever to get it back into working order. But having more planes on the front line will help us because the USA have absolutely tons, but we do sort of match them. We can contest them in the air. We just need even more planes and more range as well, so having air bases close to the front line helps. That's that then, we're settled into our stable situation. We don't really have enough supplies, but it's okay. I don't want to pull more troops off the front line and make it even worse, so we're just holding. We're constantly repelling small counterattacks and holding on to this territory, denying the USA some industrial capacity and manpower. That's all good in the long term, but no obvious conclusion to the war has yet to arise, but this is of course all before our attacks on the western coast have been prepared, so that's what the next part will be focusing on. We're going to get more death pockets going, and then pray that this somehow allows us to actually push through and get some sort of capitulation from the USA. Dem haben wir es geschworen.